Let's see. Oh, all right. Well, sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time speaking, but let's hope it goes well. If you recall back to when Theta was introducing me, she gave a little background. I'm going to go over that a little bit again. So, growing up as a little boy, my religious exploration was kind of there. Like I grew up in an a-religious household, and I read the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief series, which was about Greek mythology and this robust belief system that was a thing of the past. And I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, a cartoon about a boy who's able to control elements. And I see Ricky enjoyed Avatar: The Last Airbender. Let's go. It's a fun show. And so I was introduced to many things, and especially considering I had brothers who also were exploring and reading and being part of that. I remember not really encountering God unless I was in the presence of my grandparents. And beginning in the 4th grade, I just tried to decide for myself that it was too much for me to handle, that there was a no questions asked answer to life. And so I kind of began to realize that, all right, I'm gonna do my own thing. And so I just continued to read about Greek mythology, I read about Eastern religions, I read about Christianity, I read about Islam, and then obviously, Scientology. Scientology was always fun. I watched the Going Clear documentary. I don't know who else has partaken, but very interesting stuff. What people will do for money. It's incredible. But anyway, as Theta had mentioned, like I said, it was a sign that brought me to understanding about the Unitarian Universalists. It was a sign that was posted outside of the Circle K by my house, and every Sunday morning I would go out to Sprouts, the farmer's market, with my parents, and I would see the sign, and I would say, oh, I wonder what that's about, and I would always think about that. What is that sign about? So one day I decided to Google it and read a little blurb on what is Unitarian Universalism. And, I couldn't quite tell what it was. Honestly, I still probably couldn't describe to you everything about what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. But I knew it was interesting, and I knew it was something I wanted to check out. And so I asked my parents, hey, do you mind if I go check out this thing? It's just down the street, no trouble. And they said I probably shouldn't. And I asked again, oh, no, you probably shouldn't do that. And so one morning I woke up early and I just decided to walk over here to the location and check it out anyways. Minor act of disobedience, but I think my parents have come around just a little bit. So it was a morning in April of 2017, and I was formally introduced to Unitarian Universalism by Ron Ferris and Linda Hill. And that day, that morning, I went very early. I woke up at like 8:30. I walked there. I was there by 9, and the practice didn't start till like 10:30. So I had like an hour and a half to kill, and so they were definitely very intrigued that a young person had walked into the doors, and so they were excited. And so I sat in on this practice that day, and I thought it was cool, and so. I let that go in my mind, and I didn't go back for another couple months, but the time that I went back, it happened to be the very last time they were hosting at Greenfield Schools. So I thought, wow, this is great, and I really enjoyed that day, and so I got all the pamphlets and all the handouts that they were offering, and I brought them home. And, I thought, this is something I want to keep doing, so I have to figure out how I can keep it up. And so I showed it to my brother, Jacob. And I tried to explain it to him. He was kind of like, oh, it's kind of weird. Like, there's the sound and the fire, and, the rituals do seem a little bit strange if you're not familiar with them. But he said, you know what, I'll take you next Sunday. And so we went, and it was the very first week it was here, and I remember that Jim and Pam Donnelly were doing the service that day, and we fell in love. It was so great. It was such a funny and informative, and I can't quite remember exactly what it was about. I just remember it was awesome, and we had to come back. We had to keep coming because it was unlike anything we had seen before, and so we did. It became our Sunday ritual. It was kind of a place of cleansing and community and just take us out of our daily routine, and it was nice. It was a nice new thing for us. And so after a few months of being in the congregation, Jacob and I decided to become members. And when I became a member, I was 15. And so I remember Julie Slayton Frank and Jane Paul thinking, oh, this is so exciting, we're having some youth in the congregation. Unfortunately, I could not vote because I was too young. And so that was another big exciting moment where it was, oh, I'm growing up and I get to become a voting member of the congregation. So that's, it shows dedication. And so then I start my sophomore year. I first found out about this in my freshman year. And I get a paper in the mail saying that I've been accepted into the National Student Leadership Conference. And basically, you can do whatever you want, you just got to spend a lot of money. So I was like, oh, all right, well, let's figure that out. And so I just remember mentioning it because it was a thing that happened. I was like, oh yeah, I'm interested in doing this. I'm not really sure how, but Elizabeth Van Horn came up to me, and I don't remember engaging in conversation with her. She came to me and she said, oh, what is this thing you're trying to do? I've been hearing you talk to somebody else about it. And she was in charge of editing the newsletter at the time, or at least she had a connection or something like that. And so she began writing me a thing to put into the newsletter. And so every week there was a little blurb that says, $1 for a scholar. Derek Contreras is willing to do odd jobs around the house or outside of school hours to pay for this program's tuition. And so I did a lot of work. I pulled weeds, I sawed tree branches, I washed an RV, I moved rocks, I painted bedrooms, I planted flowers, I cleaned out closets, and really whatever I could do in order to get a little bit of funds for this trip I was going on, because it was, something that was important to me. And so that became something that I looked forward to doing. And it was really fulfilling for me because I had become part of this community and I was bonding with my fellow congregants. And so I learned about these people, I learned about their families, I learned about their careers. I heard them play music. We discussed our weekend plans, our summer plans, just what was going on around, what was happening that day. And so now these people were no longer people I just saw every Sunday and smiled at them, maybe waved, saw them at coffee. They were now people that I was becoming friends with. And so after months of building community and raising sufficient funds from the congregation, I was shipped off to Washington, D.C., and this was in July of 2018. And it lasted for about 10 days. It was a program called Political Advocacy and Public Policy. And when I got there, I was given my binder. It was a big binder full of stuff. And the first thing you see is this sticker, and it tells me that I am the Democratic Senator of New Hampshire. Yep, I'm just a little 16-year-old from Tucson, Arizona. Minimal political knowledge and experience, although I do like to listen to the news and this and that. But it was a big task to be told, you're a senator now, you're sitting on this subcommittee, and you're from New Hampshire. So I had to learn about New Hampshire's demographics, and I had to write a bill that would be suitable for a Democratic constituency and people from New Hampshire. And so, that was all a bit daunting, and while my bill didn't make it to the floor of my subcommittee, my favorite part about doing that whole Senate simulation was being able to amend other people's things. Because while I may not be the best at crafting my own things, I sure was good at hearing everything that they were saying and saying, no, I don't like that. We're going to change it to make it this way so that it's better for the people. And I got pretty good at that. I was the most vocal person in the subcommittee saying, all right, no, this bill is all right, but here's something that would make it better. And this was all right on the fly. We had 10 days. This was probably a couple days worth of the thing, and it was only like an hour a day. There was a lot that we did there. And immediately after hearing it, it was like, nope. So that was my job in those rooms. The other portion of that program was the presidential election simulation. So the parts that were moving around in that program, there was a Democratic National Committee, a Republican National Committee, there were 6 lobbyist groups, there was a journalism department, and 6 primary campaigns, 3 Democratic and 3 Republican. And I was placed on a Democratic presidential primary, and first I tried to be the nominee, I couldn't be the nominee. And so then it was, all right, what else can I do? And so I became a policy advisor to the candidate, and I also became social media coordinator. So my job was to get out the vote and talk about what my candidate stood for and what his policies were. And I think I did a really good job. I was the only one that was really doing it for any of the campaigns, and I had curated this nice conglomerate for him. It compiled all of his stuff, and it was great. So then it's election night, and it's seeming as if these 3 candidates, their whole campaign team is going to vote for them. And so we were just hoping and praying that the other people who were part of our party, and they would be like the lobbyists and the journalists and those in the committee, would vote for our candidate. So we were vying for votes. And what wound up happening was everyone did vote for their own candidate, but the person who won, it was literally, I kid you not, they won by collusion. There was a collusion case at the National Student Leadership Conference because a girl from one campaign had voted for the other campaign because he had promised her the vice presidency if he were the nominee. And so that caused a lot of hoopla at this program, and we had to get the FEC, which was really just the our coordinators, and it was a mess. And the Democratic candidate wound up losing big time. But had it been my candidate, rest assured we would have won. So, regardless of all the shady business that went down here, my experience in D.C. was very enriching and informative. And it wasn't only because of the nature of politics, which I did learn a lot about how senators operate and what it takes to write a bill and this and that, and especially amendments, because that was my thing. But more importantly, I learned about myself and others. And so I learned a lot about friendship and expression of my own emotions because I had bonded with a lot of the people there. I had met all kinds of different people. They were from all across the United States. We were in D.C., and I was like the only person from Arizona. Everyone was from everywhere else. They were shocked to find out someone from Arizona was there, and I had to fly home and this and that. But it was exciting to share my experiences. And when I came back here, and I think I sent out postcards to those who who helped me fundraise, and it was very exciting. I came back and I was trying to set up things, and that's when the idea first came that I would come and speak. And so I'm back in Tucson, and So I returned to the congregation, and it was an exciting time because it was around October that I'm thinking about, and so this was right when, oh wow, we might get a new home, we might, we just sold the Cortera property and we're thinking about buying Naughtons, and this is exciting because now we'll finally have a place and we won't have to share the space anymore. But that didn't work out, and so, I'm thinking I need to get myself involved. I'm starting to talk to Tom Sawyer about becoming a practice associate, and that was great. But the next day, I was interviewing to be on the Jewish and Latino Teen Coalition. And, I got in, and so I couldn't do that anymore. And so now I have this new commitment, which is I'm going to be going to the Jewish Federation for a couple months, and it's every Sunday, right, at 2:45. And this Reverend Ron, God bless him, but he would go on, and he would speak for a long time. And, if we're getting out of here at 2:20 and I have to be at the place at 2:45, it just doesn't work out. And I didn't feel right coming and staying for the first hour, half hour, or whatever. And so it didn't work out, and I had to prioritize and go to this instead, to the Jewish and Latino Teen Coalition. And so, I recently heard word that was a very, very nervous thing, because we have this youth in the congregation and now they have to leave. And what if they don't come back? So, but, I'm back here. And so going to the Jewish and Latino Teen Coalition, that was an exciting thing for me. However, early on in the program, when we're having to decide, okay, so first of all, a little backstory. The Jewish and Latino Teen Coalition is run by the Raul Grijalva Congressional Office and the Jewish Federation. And the purpose is to get teenagers of minority backgrounds, obviously Jewish and Latino, to get politically motivated and activated, and to all agree on one topic and to go to D.C. and lobby 2 senators and congresspeople to just for a cause. So I go there, I'm very excited. I want to do Medicare for all. I want to do single payer. I'm gonna get it. This is one thing I'm very passionate about. I want that thing. So I'm gonna fight for it and I'm gonna get it. I fought very hard. I was the most passionate one out there. Maybe not the most, but see, I got people here who are, who were advisors back then, and I'm sure they remember how fiery it got. But I wanted to do it, and almost unanimously, everyone voted for immigration. So I put myself in this position where I'm potentially creating enemies. And I'm alienating myself because I'm very dead set on getting what I want, but I don't get it. And so that was kind of uh-oh. I hope I didn't, jinx myself here and ruin my relationships with everyone here. But then by the time we were getting on the plane, it was great. It was as if by the time we were on the plane and we were getting crammed into Ubers and this and that we had all known each other forever, and it was the best of time. And so, let's see, where am I? Sorry. And then, so right as I'm getting involved in the Jewish Latino Teen Coalition, I also have to start paying for China, my trip to China. Sound familiar? And then I have to go to D.C., also familiar. But as soon as we start going off to D.C., it was like we were best of friends. So then the first couple of days we were meeting with nonprofit organizers, and we were meeting with other teenagers from the D.C. area. And so I got a taste of what life in D.C. might be kind of like, and I didn't like it all that much. I didn't think that D.C. is a place I want to end up, but who knows? Who knows where I do wind up? I just knew that the attitude in D.C. was something that I was not up for, and it had nothing to do with the go 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 attitude. It was more I think that you lose your values once you're in DC, and it's kind of, you see things differently, and I didn't want to, organize, like, I didn't want to be involved with that kind of thing. And so then, after the first couple of days, we begin going on the Hill. We get to see our Congress people and others. And there was this one guy who caused almost universal distaste and frustration. And it was like one of our earliest meetings, and we hadn't quite nailed down all of our positions, but we met this guy, and it was like, it was hard for us because we had very little time, and we hadn't quite memorized everything that we needed to know. And it was kind of soul crushing. It was like, you don't know how much I want to just let that guy have it, but you can't do that. And at other points, our teenaged immaturity may have gotten the better of us in front of congressional staffers, because we started laughing, but we kept it contained, and there was no poor taste in what we were doing. I don't know if it was noticed, or if it was just they were very polite and didn't say anything. But in the end, we all had a great time. And so, quick side note, this has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but one of my favorite things to do in DC was to switch the first sound of their first and last names. So this is something that me and Shari had a lot of fun doing. And that's totally off topic, but that came to mind, and it was so much fun. So, this is Lou Hamburger, who became Hugh Lamburger, and Shari Gooder became Gari Shooter. It's fun stuff. So anyway, despite this trip being only 5 days long, and us having just a huge range of experiences, whether it be very serious or very comical and childish, we bonded, and I'm glad to have met all the individuals involved in that process. And so, if the Jewish Latino Teen Coalition was not crazy enough, 7 days after I landed, so we land in Tucson, we were just in DC, I land, 7 days later, I'm back on the airplane flying to China. And that was crazy times, having to go back and forth and also deal with schoolwork and everything. It wasn't a whole lot of fun, but definitely the trips were. And so going to China, I'm about to embark on this 15-hour journey in which we fly from Tucson to Texas to China. So to me, I was very confused with the whole situation, but I think that we added a few hours to our trip by backtracking, but that's just how it works. You have to deal with the, bureaucracy or whatever it is that's, that whole thing. But the purpose of the trip was to introduce teenagers to the world, to get you to be able to go out there when you have time, and to become a more worldly citizen. And so we show up, and on the first day, we go to Tiananmen Square in the Forbidden City. And we learn a little bit about the communist uprising, and the guy who was our tour guide, I couldn't quite tell what was his deal. I don't know that he was a communist or that he was sympathetic to communism, but he would say some things sometimes, and it was like, all right, dude. And so, actually, no, he couldn't have been a communist because he was a Muslim. So, and if you're a communist, you have to renounce your religion. So he did have some things to say about the Communist Party that were not positive, and I remember that. And we learned a little bit about the dynasties when we were going through the Forbidden City, and it had some very beautiful architecture there, and the whole experience was great. And then we went to the Summer Palace, which is where Empress Dowager Cixi went, and she was a wild woman. She was very power hungry and was willing to do whatever it took. She killed her sons, she killed her husband. She was in it for the power. And a lot of people believe that she was responsible for the for like the fall of the imperial like dynasty in China. And then the next day we went to a tea house and we learned about the tradition of drinking tea. And that was a really exciting experience. We got to be in this traditional tea house and drink 5 different kinds of tea, and you learn how to hold it, you learn about the history and the health benefits and how it was used for thousands of years and whatnot. But we get these great experiences, and we get to learn about the traditions and everything about what goes around there. And then, on the 3rd day, we go to the Dalai Lama temple. And being in the Dalai Lama temple was probably my favorite part, because when you go there, it's this massive palace that was once the home of a prince. And he wanted to make nice with the minority groups in China. And so he decides he's going to give this palace to the Dalai Lama so that he can build ties with the Tibetan minority that was living in China. And when you go in there, it's this beautiful compound, and at the very back there's this massive chamber with a 80-foot or maybe 60-foot tall Buddha. And it's made out of a single piece of wood. It holds like the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest carving statue. And being in there, it was like very overwhelming. And there was a lot of, I think, energy and like feng shui. And it was one of the best experiences I've had in my life, being able to stand there in the presence of this thing that's taller than this building, and just utterly massive and very beautifully crafted. Everything about it left me awestruck. And then, we did lots of other things, but I think those are the most important, being able to absorb the culture, whether it's through the food, the tea, the religion of the past, the monarchy. You get this taste of the culture. And so then, as we did many other things, that happened. And I came back, and I was very excited to share my experiences and talk to people. I know that Richard Kopp used to live in China, and he was very excited for me to go. It was all kinds of fun stuff. And while all of this is also happening, the timeline is very messy here, but because I did so much. But one of my other favorite parts about being involved in this community was the Choi Chow time, which Theta did mention. And so I think one of the most important parts of that is that I get the opportunity to mend with or mingle with my congregants, and we get to interact in small groups and learn more about each other, and have a tasty dinner, and everyone gets to be a part of that and do their own thing. And so I think that's kind of encompassing of the whole spirit of a congregation, is that everyone brings their own part. Someone brings the main, someone brings the sides, the dessert, drinks, and it's just, you get to bring your own experiences. And doing this was kind of overwhelming for me because I'm 17, and I don't want to state the obvious, but there's no other 17-year-olds, yeah? You're not. I'm 17 and you're not. And so everyone at these dinners has lived a full life. They've, worked for careers and done all these things, and they've dedicated themselves, and they've lived in different states and cities, and they're all over the place. And now they've wound up here. And I get to sit with them, and they get to share their experiences with me. And I get to share my experiences of a 17-year-old, which, I don't have nearly as many. But I think that being able to learn, everyone is so giving. Everyone in the congregation is willing to share about their lives. And being able to absorb that information as a 17-year-old and hearing from people who have these diverse backgrounds, it's really important. And so what I want to get to is that, it took a belief system that believes in love and justice and compassion and an emphasis on personal discovery and individual truth to get me in the door. But what really kept me here is all the people here who are generous with their giving and genuinely interested in the initiation of the conversation that they offer you. And so that's really something that I would hope that I'd be able to do in my life, is in the retirement stage of my life, that I'm in a robust congregation and I get to help, or I get to guide and be someone like everyone here is for them, because I think that's a great way to kind of give back. And so MVUU has provided a sanctuary where I've been able to grow and learn, and I thank every individual here for everything that they've done. And much love and thanks to you all. And thank you. Good afternoon. All right.